Good afternoon, good night to you, Ewan. It is currently 6 o'clock on the Eastern Time. A beautiful day in Charlotte. 70 degrees here. It is March 4th. Ewan, how's the weather over there and how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Like you say, it's night over here, and it's also also not such a beautiful day. It's dark and cold, but a lot warmer from having from being here with you, mate. So yeah, excited to get into this one.
This should be a fun one. So we'll go ahead and get the housekeeping out of the way first. Um, if you're listening to this, it's more than likely going to be on a Wednesday. Don't know what Wednesday. Um, but go ahead and check out our other content on the Full Time Roundup page, XI of the Week. We usually drop a podcast on Sunday night, as well as the betting show that's usually on a Sunday and Monday. So for YouTube, subscribe and like. This will just be on YouTube. So subscribe and like the video on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Go ahead and rate 5 stars and download the episodes. And then, of course, follow Full Time Roundup on Twitter or on X at Full Time Roundup. Interact with us. Let us know what you think. If we covered anything that we missed, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. But Ewan, this is a bonus edition here. We will be covering the English Championship with the man, the myth, the legend, Euan Reynard, coming all the way from England, like he said. You can follow this guy. Great content on X at _UNR. Note off the top of my head this time, Ewan. So we're already jumping right into it. And just a little background on you, Ewan. You're a Leeds fan. You're a season ticket holder, I believe you mentioned. And I think you should be able to provide a great perspective, not only on the championship, but being a yo-yo club and your thoughts on, being in the Prem versus being in the championship, kind of that weird dynamic of being really good one year and then really struggling the next year. So I'm looking forward to jumping right in.
Yeah. Like you say, we've not yo-yoed too hard. We just one up, one down, but hopefully we're going to go back up and stay there. But yeah, like you say, yeah, excited to be here. And yeah, that's right. Leeds fan, season ticket holder, the whole 9 yards. So yeah, for better or worse.
Is When do you start to define yo-yo? Is it like every other year you're going up? Like, is it well defined in England, or is this like a thing that us Americans do or call it?
No, it's yo-yo club is the term that we use as well. I think you're probably getting into that territory once you've done a two up and a two down. I think once you've done that twice over, that's when you get into that territory. So that is, I think the most famous example is Norwich, because they,
Yeah.
they really severely bounced up and down pretty quickly. Yeah, I think that's when you get into real yo-yo club territory. And listen, it's probably going to be what comes up with a few teams in the Championship next year, or at least a couple of them with Sheffield United and Burnley, because they'll be threatening to go up again. And in both cases, it'll be can we trust these teams in the Premier League now that they're back up? We saw what happened last time. So then that's when you get into that kind of territory. It's where Leeds will be if we get promoted. It's where Leicester will be, Southampton, etc. So yeah, yo-yo club is the term, and this year it's what we're trying to be, I suppose. But yeah, something you want to avoid long term.
And this is coming fresh off Arsenal versus Sheffield United, who Arsenal absolutely battered Sheffield 6-0. One of the more pathetic performances I've seen to recent date. So we'll definitely touch on that and those kind of teams kind of in there. But, personally, as a football fan, I've always enjoyed the championship, especially because I enjoy the Premier League. And this year, we have an absolutely lovely season of not only promotion, but relegation. So we are currently through 35 games. I believe you said there was 46 left for the season,
Yeah,
or
46
46
in
total.
46 in total. Yeah, most teams are at 35. There's a little bit of a little bit of buffer there with some called off games and some FA Cup stuff, but yeah, for the most part, most teams have about 11 games to go.
Perfect. And so, for promotion, just to break it down, 1 and 2 are auto promotion, and then spots 3 through 6 are played through a playoff. So third and sixth play then 4 and 5 play double legs. Is that correct?
Yeah, two-legged. The higher team, so the third, the team who finishes third and the team who finishes fourth will get the second legs at home.
Okay. So it's already seeded who plays who first. Okay. And then the last final is obviously played at Wembley in a one leg final, which is obviously coined the most expensive match in the world or whatever it's called. But yeah, it's absolutely delightful. If you're not for the neutral, I'd say more than the playoff fans, how they feel probably. But we are in a state right now where for the promotion, 5th through 8th are currently separated by 6 points. I'm actually about to share my screen right here. I just wanted to take a look and see who you are liking, who you're not liking, and just kind of hear your thoughts. Just bear with me as I share this real quick. So we got
Yep.
the championship table. So 5th through around 8th, separated by 6 points. Are you buying stock on any of these teams? Are you selling stock on any of these teams? Because there's a big gap between Southampton and West Brom.
Yeah, it's definitely a defined top four, and that kind of came through around Christmas. So you take those 4 teams in automatic promotion, and yeah, that we've been fighting for that for a couple months now. It sort of seems like a bit of a cop out, I suppose, because they are the highest team there of the 5th down. But I have a lot of stock in West Brom as a team that obviously those 4 teams fighting for automatic promotion. They're not only the highest seeded team of the best of the rest, they're the team that in the head-to-head matchups has been really good at playing against the better sides. They have a head coach in Carlos Corberán, who is one of the best head coaches in the division and is specifically good at that game planning against better sides. You go through the results of when they've played those 4 teams above them. There's some wins, some draws, some losses. The performances themselves are really, really impressive. They know how to stifle teams really well. So I'm almost at the point where if you get to the playoffs and you get 2 teams in there who'll be really, really disappointed by the fact that they weren't able to get automatic promotion and will have major, major points totals and the feeling off the back of that they've been a bit hard done by. West Brom is a tough team to run into. Like, for as much as teams want to be getting into the top 2, and that is the major, major goal, I think there's still a lot to be said for whoever manages to finish third, because then they can avoid having to play West Brom over 2 legs. Take them at Wembley, big occasion. But yeah, I would definitely be buying stock in West Brom as the team that outside of that top 4 has the best chance to get promoted. They're just too good in them head-to-head games, and I'd be a little bit scared of Carlos Corberán and them guys because, yeah, they know how to game plan against a top team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know they have a striker in Daryl DK, the American. I think he's injured right now, so it'll be interesting to see. He was a big money signing when he was brought overseas from the MLS, so we'll see if he'll be able to kind of play a part
Yeah,
in
he's
that promotion.
he's injured his Achilles again. It's a really
Oh,
sad one because
oh no.
he's a great player. Like, he played at a club quite near to me, playing for Barnsley, a team that I go and watch kind of infrequently, and he was really good there. And then he's gone to West Brom, and it's just the injuries just seem to be piling up, and it's a really sad one. Of those teams there that you mentioned, though, on a bit more of a positive note, Josh Sargent, who got a Premier League move to Norwich, didn't quite work out for him there, has dropped down into the Championship, and is now, he's one of the best strikers in the division. So
He
just
is.
as a
Since he came back from injury, which was like maybe 8 to 10 games ago, he's just been on fire, scoring his like goal tally. It's like averaging a goal a game at this rate. And I know our friend John Hayes is a big Norwich supporter and a big Josh Sargent guy, so he's gonna love this discourse.
Yeah, no, he's a good player. He's a good player. I mean, there's a lot, and this obviously is a big picture championship conversation. There is a lot to be said for signings that come to the Premier League, playing for teams that will be in that relegation fight. If those teams do go down, rather than kind of looking around and wanting to stay in a top league in Europe, a lot to be said for going into the Championship and playing for a team that's going to have a bit more of the ball, whether you're a playmaker or a striker. So a team that's going to create more chances for you. It's a real way to get your stock back up and get a bit more confidence back as a player. It's not the it's not the worst thing in the world to drop down into a second division. And I think, Josh Sargent kind of serves testament to that, because even if Norwich don't get promoted, his name's probably going to be buzzing around some Premier League teams who either do go up or the ones that slightly avoid relegation as an option for them.
Yeah, I could also see him making a move to a different country as well. Any first division, really, like a Belgium or like an Eredivisie type team. I feel like he's proved himself as a player now. So it's really, can he finish with Norwich on a high note to kind of earn that move if Norwich end up not going up. But another team I wanted to talk about here is a team that I've been following more as of late, is Hull City. And in Hull City, they've been good. They didn't start the season off very well, if I remember correctly, but they got the Liverpool loan army with Morton and Fabio Carvalho, especially in January, and it seems like he's been playing a striker / winger role, and like Hull City has completely turned it around, and now they're kind of shooting right up the table.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Hull, because their manager, Liam Rosenior, there's been a bit of a trend recently in terms of the legends of English football have got into management, had varied levels of success, and when they've gone on to different jobs, it hasn't quite worked out for them because their backroom staff has left. An example of this that I think a lot of people know about, it hasn't quite worked for Michael Beale since, but Steven Gerrard very successful with Michael Beale. Then he leaves, takes another job, and Steven Gerrard doesn't look the same manager. This is one of the more low-key examples of that, where Wayne Rooney, up against it with a massive points deduction and all sorts going on at Derby County, was seen as actually doing quite a decent job. And one of the reasons for that, a lot of people attribute to, was the fact that he had Rosenior on that staff, helping out and doing the sort of tactical stuff. The idea behind this stuff is you have a backroom staff and an assistant who's doing the tactical stuff, doing a lot of the game analysis and everything like that. And then when you have a Wayne Rooney or you have a Steven Gerrard who has the charisma and the cachet to get the message across, you almost have a perfect marriage. But when when you get the brain drain, which is inevitable, things don't quite carry on as positively as they once were. So Liam Rosenior now takes the job at Hull City. Young manager, like you say, doesn't hit the ground running immediately, but with the loan signings they've been able to bring in, Fabio Carvalho is like a major coup for that kind of club, a club like Hull City. Like they were up against Leeds, were one of the teams that were in for him, and Hull were able to get him when they were much further down the table than they are now. So between having Liam Rosenior and having that squad, they are an impressive team. They are a little easier on the eye than I would say West Brom are, a team that I fancy a little bit more in their matchups in the playoffs. But if you're looking for a team that's going to entertain you and is going to create chances and just be a bit more fun, I would say Hull is probably that team. These two teams actually played each other quite recently. I think that game you see on there, that draw that was before the last games they played, I believe that is the game that Hull played at home and ended 1-1 between the two teams. So, yeah, that was a hell of a game, and it was a nice clash of styles.
Excellent recall, Euan. So another, we can just kind of make our way up the table, and then we'll go to the relegation picture. But number 4, Southampton. I actually had a chance to watch Southampton versus Liverpool in the FA Cup. Me and you have talked offline about Russell Martin and kind of your thoughts there. But I was really impressed how they started the game. I mean, I was a little disappointed just that they kind of rested guys, but I guess when you're 4th in the championship, you want to really go for that 1 and 2 spot. But he really committed to playing out the back. I was impressed with how they were able to break down Liverpool's just natural press from a kickoff or from a goal kick, excuse me. And they created chances enough to beat Liverpool on the day, but at least from the build up to past the halfway line, I was really impressed. Maybe not as much in the final third, but they also had their bench guys playing. So maybe that's kind of why it wasn't very easy on the eye going, in that final third. But I was impressed with the squad that they have, and I think they should definitely challenge for this championship spot or playoff spot, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, they're still in there with a little bit of a shout in terms of the automatics. The problem is because of how tough the standards are, a 5-point gap feels like a 10-point gap because you're begging for the teams up there to drop points, and no one's letting up really, apart from Leicester, who are in horrible form, obviously, but they've built up such a lead that there they are still at the top. I didn't catch much of the game that you mentioned there, the Southampton versus Liverpool game. From just kind of looking at it from a distance, I think both teams rested a lot of players. I know that Southampton team had a fair amount of players rested from what they usually use in the league. So pretty impressive that they were able to still get their style of play across with those guys in there. It shows how much he's been able to get across the way that they want to play, that when those reserves come in, it's not a case of them having top level elite talent coming down from the Premier League and it's only those guys who can perform. It's something that's obviously seems to have been taught throughout the depth of the team. And that's that's a big tick as a head coach, that you can have people come in. It's what a lot of people attribute to Ange when they talk about Ange Postecoglou versus Ten Hag. Like, oh, when the reserves come in and they have injuries, the style of play is the same, versus Gallet Ten Hag, where injuries happen. It's like, oh, the injuries, we can't play like this. It's like, it's a bit of a crappy excuse in some people's opinion. The problem I have with Southampton is what you touch on a little bit there. It's final third stuff. What they have in the Championship is playing against a lot of oppositions where their build-up play almost, it doesn't really matter so much because you're not coming up against teams that will play aggressive against you and press highly. So a Liverpool game, they were probably quite excited to show it off because Liverpool will be a lot more willing to get after them, even with some of the reserve players in there. With the Championship, their build-up play, they're not able to show it off as much. So they're relying on the final third stuff where players are occupying spaces, what kind of third man runs they're creating. And I watch them, and what I get a lot is it becomes quite stale sometimes, their attacking patterns pretty much. You can see that within 20 minutes of a game, if they're getting frustrated, there's not much of a alternative that they can go to in terms of actions. Like, not a plan B in terms of, oh, we're trying to play through now, let's just go long and pump it into the box. But a bit of an alternation in terms of, okay, let's move someone into this area and put them here, and let's see how that manipulates the man marking structure that they have. If we're playing against a team that's playing zonal, let's try and move guys around when the ball is in motion and pull them out that way, and then have someone running into that space. Not as much of that stuff as you see from the other top teams. They're also a little bit defensively frail, I feel, and they probably have the worst goalkeeper of the top four sides, which, when you're defensively frail and you have a goalkeeper who isn't bailing you out as much as the other teams have, that's a tough recipe to have, especially if you fall into the playoffs where the margins are small. So that's where my Southampton worries come from, and it'll be exciting to see how it turns out because, yeah, Russell Martin is exciting. He'll be someone who will get linked with jobs even if Southampton don't get to the Premier League, but there's definitely some stuff that he has to work on as a manager for sure.
Do they still have Bazunu?
That's the goalkeeper, yeah.
Okay, so you don't rate Bazunu as a prospect?
No.
City kid. I mean, he's been talked about a lot in spaces for a while now about being a good goalkeeper. He struggled last year for sure in the Prem, but you're still not impressed with him in the Championship?
No. Him and Leeds' goalkeeper Melier almost exist in the same bucket of, they really struggled last season. They made a lot of errors leading to goals. And the idea was, if they go down to the Championship, they'll be able to show off a little bit more what they are as ball playing goalkeepers, which I think is what has carried favour for both of them. And also they just won't be being peppered with shots all the time. Like, people, certainly in the case of these two goalkeepers, thought that ultimately their confidence went because all they were doing was having shots peppered at them, and eventually just kind of broke their resolve. The opposite is now happening for both goalkeepers, and there's still errors there. And there's still moments where, okay, if you're a top Championship goalkeeper, I kind of need you to bail us out every now and then. Like, even with shots that, okay, you wouldn't blame a goalkeeper for them. If you're trying to be a top prospect, can you bail us out every now and then? And I'm no goalkeeping expert. I try to stay away from it a little bit, but I think with Bazunu, it's too obvious of a weak link to not bring up.
No, absolutely. And we're going to skip over Leeds because we're going to get really into it in a little bit about it. But Ipswich Town, this is probably the one team that I do not know much about. Can you just give a quick, summarization of kind of how they play and why, they're in second place right now above a Leeds to Southampton? and just behind Leicester City.
Yeah, you'll see from the 4 teams there, it's the 3 relegated teams from last season. So when it comes to them, you look at their managers, look at their teams, style of play, exciting to watch, everything like that. But ultimately, there's a caveat that parachute payments and the good players that they've been able to keep after being relegated are providing a pretty high floor that any decent manager should be able to work from. Ipswich not only are the one team who don't have parachute payments and didn't come down for the Premier League, they actually were promoted from the 3rd division last year. So this
Really?
is, yeah, they won the 3rd division at an absolute canter. So that's what makes this all the more impressive, that it's not just a team that was in the Championship last season. They're actually looking to go back to back in terms of promotions. And based off of what I say there, it's probably not a surprise that I think Kieran McKenna, of the 4 managers, is the most impressive. What he's been able to do.
I think I'd concur with that after hearing that. Is this like a maybe this is like just a really dumb comparison, but is this almost like a Luton, just like with the lowest budget, just somehow punching above their weight week in, week out?
It's a little bit different to Luton, because I think a lot of the charm with Luton is like that is not a like there's big clubs, fairly big clubs. They're like a club that nearly went bust completely as an entity, as a company, a few years ago. They were really struggling. They were dipping around non-league. So they're a bit more of a fairy tale from that perspective. And obviously they play at Kenilworth Road. It's a really kind of charming ground. It's not something that a lot of people are used to seeing in the Premier League. Like Bournemouth's ground is small, but it seems pretty modern with the way it's laid out. Kenilworth Road is almost perfectly imperfect. Like there's a stand here, then there's one up there, and then suddenly there's this little corner with it can have about 200 people sitting in it. It's very much it's very antiquated. With Ipswich, they are a pretty big club. They play at Portman Road. It's about 30,000 seat stadium. They've been in the Premier League before for extended periods and had success there. So it's a little bit different from that perspective. But when you talk about the actual development of that team and what they've had to do to get here, not too dissimilar from Luton. The styles are very different. Luton were, and you're seeing it this year, they're a rugged team. They were there to they were going to give you
bully
a really
ball.
Yeah, exactly. They were going to give you a tough 90 minutes. You would feel after a game that you had just played Luton, because they were going to get stuck into you. It was going to be a tough, narrow midfield that was going to force you out wide and then was going to put you into the stands. It was very aggressive, and it's a style that Nathan Jones originally put in, and then Rob Edwards has kind of taken and ran with it a little bit. This isn't the Rob Edwards that we saw at Watford. He's kind of adjusted himself to get Luton where they are, and fair play to him for doing it. Ipswich, on the other hand, they played the football that most people enjoy, the kind of beautiful, expansive, get 5 players into the final line, provide space for midfielders by, having the opposition come onto you a little bit. They play all that kind of stuff. And yeah, to go back to Kieran McKenna a little bit, he is someone who, Ipswich need to keep pace with him. He is not going to be in the Championship for long, whether he gets Ipswich promoted or whether it's a case of another club kind of pinching him. He is the most impressive one of the lot, and yeah, he's someone who actually who's actually developed through Man United's coaching staff. So if things do get even better for him, they might be feeling a little bit upset that they weren't able to keep him around. Ipswich Town, very impressive, very, very impressive.
Ineos might be looking for a new manager in the summer, so never say never, Euan. But I will say, for being a team that's promoted, 22 wins, 9 draws, and 4 losses is fairly remarkable. They're obviously the most informed Championship team in the top 6 right now with 5 straight victories. That's why they're kind of catching up, and now they're 3 points from Leicester here. But Leicester City. And if you're a listener of the show, you've heard me talk about Leicester City. I had a take that they'd break Burnley's 100-point season record. Now, they didn't lose a single game for a long time, and now they've lost 3 in the last 5. So they've kind of come back to earth. They still have 78 points with 11 games left. If I do the math, they could well off go over 100 points, but they're also going to be in the FA Cup against Chelsea as well, so maybe that plays a factor. But what do you think on Leicester? I've been really impressed with what I've gotten to watch of them. I love Maresca, a Pep guy. And he kind of stepped right in and kind of is looking like he's going to shoot them right back up to the Prem.
Yeah, you mentioned there he's from that Pep staff at Man City, and you could tell that within 5 minutes of watching his teams play. It's very similar in style, and it's almost that kind of that death by possession and death by avoiding all transition moments, but like full control of games. So yeah, you can see that style definitely comes across. But they obviously, you see there from the form, they've hit a bit of a rough patch. I think with Leicester, they were running really hot for a long, long time. I would watch them play. They were obviously good. They're in my opinion, the best team in the league. It's not really a controversial opinion.
Top down for
But
sure, yeah.
yeah, exactly. But they were getting a little bit lucky here, a little bit lucky there. They had these long stretches of not losing and long stretches of winning multiple games in a row, and you were thinking this is still the best team in the league, but maybe they're probably the points total, how miraculous it is, maybe doesn't fully reflect how good this team actually is. And what's happened now is that they've got these 3 losses in a row, and I'm thinking back to the game that we played against them at Ellen Road on that Friday night, where where Leeds beat them 3-1.
Archie Gray.
Exactly, that goal got taken off him as well. You'd be sick, wouldn't you? But yeah, it's that game. They were the better team. They had complete control of that game, and we managed to function a chance from a deflected cross, and then we get the deflected goal from Archie Gray, and suddenly you're in the ascendancy, and that's football, isn't it? That kind of stuff happens. And then with the QPR
You were at the game, right?
Yeah, I was at the game. It's a hell of an occasion. I obviously didn't care that we were lucky to win that game. I mean, I just take it as it comes. But yeah, it certainly were lucky. And then they lose to QPR this weekend with a couple of goals. One from a set piece, the second one where it's about the ball falling and it just comes off someone off a bit in a bad way. And it's not like a well manufactured goal. It's just the ball falls wrong for you, and then a good finish happens. So I kind of think that the regression is always coming. You can't outrun it. That this is just them getting a little bit of comeuppance for how hot they were running beforehand. Like if you sprinkled these fixtures out a little evenly before this time, people wouldn't be as worried. And when you look at the results that they've just had, you think, is there a performance change? Have standards dropped? Have they gotten worse? I don't think they have. I just think now they're getting a little bit of bad luck in the way that most teams do, and they've been able to avoid for so long. Now it's coming for them. I'm still really confident that they will win the league. I'm still obviously really confident that they'll be at least one of the top 2 teams. They'll obviously be panicking because it's getting a lot closer than they would have liked it to be. But yeah, I'm still confident for them. And I'm still confident that your prediction of 100 points, they will get to that mark. Burnley got 101. There we go.
I need
Burnley
102. I need 102.
Yeah, I
or
mean,
at least
if they get to
Burnley.
if they get to 100 though, as long as they make that mark, I think you're all right. Even though you're not technically right, I think you can still hold it up as as a fairly strong take. Like it's 22 points from 11 games. You can do the math and play that out however you want, but that's 22 points from 33 possible, taking 66% of points from your games. You can see there from what the points have taken so far that they can even let standards drop a little bit based off their general performance and still make that total. I think they will. I think they'll be fine. They just they need to weather the storm a little bit here.
I hope so. But that was awesome. And then we're gonna go just real quickly to the relegation here. So the bottom 3 are relegated here. So Stoke City is on that fringe like playoff team or fringe relegation team right now. And if you look, 38 points all the way to 44 points. That's only a 6-point difference is Watford. I mean, this might be a relegation for the ages. Are you really worried? I mean, I'm seeing some red here and I'm seeing some green, but are you really worried about one of these teams and you think, it's not going to be as crazy as I'm thinking it will be?
I mean, you mentioned there you can go all the way up to Middlesbrough. They're on even points with Watford in 12th as well. So Watford are in the top half of the table while simultaneously being 6 points off relegation.
It's wild.
It speaks to the ridiculousness of the league. It's pretty crazy. like if we just work bottom down, and if we work from bottom up here, Rotherham, you don't have to have much of a conversation about
Rubbish.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're pretty. Yeah, they're cooked at this stage. It's a long way back, and I don't think they'll be able to do it. I don't think anyone really does. Sheffield Wednesday, they have a head coach in Danny Roll, who, because they have him, I really hope they stay up, because I think they can build something with him. The job he's done is so impressive. He came in about 10 games into the season, and at that time, people thought Sheffield Wednesday would be what Rotherham are now. People thought that team that just didn't have a lot of talent, that had their owner emailing people at 3 a.m. in the morning, telling to get behind the club, or if they hate me so much, then get your own money and buy it. Like, they have real ownership issues, combined with a squad that is not talented, combined with the fact that they got promoted last season through a last-minute winner in extra time of the playoffs. So if you're talking about a team if you're talking about a team that, and obviously the playoffs are very fun, but a team that maybe on merit wasn't ready to be in the championship. On top of the fact that they came back from being 4-0 down from the first leg in the playoff semis, like, they really had to ride their luck to get promoted last season, and it was kind of showing early doors. So Danny Roll comes in, and they think this is a club in disarray, ownership issues, a squad that really isn't good enough, and now they're bringing in a 35-year-old to be a manager for the first time. Like, good luck to him, but this is a recipe for disaster. But he's managed to not only get them, getting results. You can see there they've won each of their last 3. They actually
They're
play
hot.
pretty good. Yeah, they play pretty good football. They get the ball down on the deck. They obviously don't commit as many men as the other players, as the other teams near the top. But they play with really good width. They're able to play they're able to play fast without being open in transition, which is a really tough kind of needle to thread. And they do a really good job of it. And that is something where you can put it down as, if a team can do that, that really is coaching. And like I say, the players there are not all that talented, but he's getting the best out of them, putting them in the best positions for them to thrive. So I'm hopeful they stay up. Stoke, I think, between their manager and their players, it's a situation where I give them the benefit of the doubt. The two teams outside the relegation zone that I'm the most worried about are Birmingham and Millwall. Millwall, it seems a bit strange to say that because they've won each of the last 2, but they've brought in Neil Harris, who is a former manager there and is a club legend. I believe he's their all-time record goal scorer. They brought him in for kind of that new manager bounce energy, even though he's already been there. It's a new manager bounce energy. The fans love him because he's a club legend. Just to get some good feeling about the place and just hopefully turn things around. And he did. They won away at Southampton, which is obviously a great result. My worry with it is that when you go for that so kind of far away from what it will be the last 5-game run-in, I worry that with the talent in the squad, that can run out a little bit. That new manager bounce energy kind of stuff. I think that
I give it 3 games for a new manager bounce. That's like my personal dumb mind. I give it 3 games. You see how it goes, especially after the first one, like Calzona for Napoli. Like, you can't. The vibes can only go for so long, and then teams start to figure out the new manager. Usually it's an interim guy, so they're not as familiar with how they set up. And then you have the sample size, you know how to play against them, and then no more bounce.
Yeah, exactly. You can't quantify a new manager bounce too well, but we all have our idea of, okay, it's this long, it's this long. What it isn't is it is 11 games long. We know that pretty much. So I worry. Yeah, exactly. I worry about them from that perspective, especially a manager that they've already had and moved on from. Like, you have a new manager bounce with him, but then suddenly it's just the old manager's here and he's saying the old stuff, and I'm blocking it out like I used to do. And then with Birmingham, I'll just say quickly with them, worried about them as well, from the perspective of they're a team from ownership level just seem a little bit. They don't seem like they know what they're doing, which I know at this
about
stage.
Tom Brady.
That's my goat, but I don't know how good he is as a football owner. I'll say that, and I mean, I don't really know how much influence he has there. I imagine it's quite minimal, but he's been a good face for it. But I worry about them from that perspective. Like, ownership, you think, oh, that's really only kind of putting the hand in the pocket for transfer windows. I think when your ownership is bad and you get into a relegation scrap where there's general panic around environment, that actually does matter a lot. And what they also have an issue with is that their manager, a recently appointed one who came in for Wayne Rooney, Tony Mowbray, has actually had to move away from the team because of a health issue. So they've appointed someone I actually think was a really good appointment who would have helped them out a lot, but he's had to step away because of health. And you know, I say that I don't really trust the owners there. You can't predict that kind of stuff. You can't blame them for that. That's just life happening to football. But it really doesn't help. So I look at those two teams and think they're the ones where I could really see them not only dropping off, but once it does drop off, I can see that negative momentum, clawing them down almost. So they're the two teams outside the relegation zone I feel the most worried about.
Yeah, Birmingham was an interesting one because they started off the season really hot. They got, the cash injection from Tom Brady. Wayne Rooney finishes this season as DC. He comes back to England. Then he basically vultures the job from whoever was in it, who actually moved to Swansea. Am I getting that correct? But whoever, they basically told the Birmingham current coach to kick rocks. Then Wayne Rooney comes in, goes like winless in like 11. He gets sacked, and then Tony Mowbray comes in, has a health scare. So it's just been a complete nightmare for Birmingham, who at the start of the season thought, all right, we have enough juice to maybe even get a promotion. Is that kind of right?
No, you've got that pretty much. You've got that pretty much spot on. It's an absolute roller coaster. Like their second game of the season, they played Leeds United at home.
Whoops.
And they won 1-0. And fans after that game were saying, between that result, playing a team that was a promotion favourite, winning, between the fact that it was the first game for the new ownership, their fans were thinking like, this is the most bright things have been for Birmingham in years, because they had real issues with their previous ownership. To think of what that was like to what they're feeling now, it's, you can say it's been a roller coaster. It's not even really been a roller coaster. It's just been a roller coaster that just goes downhill. So it's it's pretty awful for them. And these are the kind of clubs that get relegated. So it's
without a doubt. Sorry about that. My lights went out for a second, but it's been great talking about the relegation promotion battle. Now we're going to just ask you just a couple more broad questions just on how it is. So let's see here. All right. Would you rather be a good championship side or a really bad Premier League side? Because I've seen, take Burnley, for example, 101 points last year. Best championship side ever. And they're complete and utter dog shit in the Premier League. And that's got to be weird going from a season where you barely lose ever to losing every single game in miraculous fashion. Like, where's your stand on that? Because Leeds had a really tough go in the Prem that last season, especially with Bielsa leaving. And, you're probably enjoying yourself in the championship currently.
Yeah, if the question, would you rather be a good side in the Championship or a poor side in the Premier League? The answer is a good side in the Championship. Your team's winning more often, you're enjoying the football more, everything like that. It's a better fan experience, obviously. I think most people would agree. Yeah, I'd rather be Leeds this season than be Burnley this season, and I'd rather have been Burnley last season than be Leeds last season. I think the question which comes in is that you're touching on something here which fans actually do speak quite a lot about. The idea that it's great this season. We're really we're pushing for promotion. We're nervous about our games. We hope we do it, but ultimately, is it just to go up and lose every week and come back down? I think when you get into that mindset, that's where I start to disagree. Because one, if you just stay in the Championship, guess where your good players are going to go? They're going to go to other clubs, and things are not going to be fun forever. You're eventually going to lose players and become part of the Championship landfill, so to speak. But the other part is that I think a lot of clubs, make this kind of chat that it almost gives those teams an excuse to make excuses for themselves. When we have examples of lots of teams that have been able to go up from the Championship and sustain themselves, obviously the glass ceiling of the top 6, 7 is a hard one to break, and no one has really proven that they can consistently break it. But there's still a lot to be said for being a team that's in the Premier League, mid-table, lower to mid-table, means that you have a better squad that can be competitive in the cup. If you're able to break through that ceiling a little bit and get into Europe one year, then you can have a European, you can have a European run. Which also, when you consider the strength of the Premier League, the teams that get into those European competitions, especially the Europa League and the Conference League, they have like a real advantage just purely monetarily. So that's the kind of things that you should really be aiming for if you're a championship club who's in the promotion race and thinking about, oh, do I really want to get promoted into the Premier League and have a tough time? Or, do I want to stay down here and keep having fun? I think if you project that out long term, it's a little bit more bleak staying down there than it is made out to be. And also, I think there's just a lot of excuses made for teams that go up as like, oh, they've got the money, they've got this. It's been proven that you can push through it a little bit, and I think we're going to have a little conversation here about, Burnley, obviously 101 points, and this year they have 13 so far. We're going to talk a little bit about how that's happened and everything like that. And that'll hopefully bring a few answers as to what I'm talking about there with the excuse making and that it's a little bit more realistic to get up there and sustain than this Premier League season has made it look.
Yeah, that's true. And kind of piggybacking off of that, I'll probably need your impressive recall here, but Bournemouth came up not last season, but the season before, I believe, if I'm speaking correctly. And now they hired Iriola. They've invested in the squad, and now it's looking like they're kind of on the up and up of being more of a mid-table, looked at as more of a mid-table side than like a relegation favorite. I think it was them, Forest. I'm missing one. They all stayed up. I'm pretty sure all three of those sides stayed up.
Yeah, because Burnley, Bournemouth were in that yo-yo territory because I think they went up immediately after going down.
But who was it? Forest?
Was it Fulham when Mitrovic
scored? Fulham.
Yeah,
yes, it was Fulham.
5 goals.
Exactly. So is Bournemouth, even Fulham in that, kind of all three of them, like I feel like they gave a good blueprint on, Forest, not so much with how much they spent in signing 26 players in a window probably wasn't the brightest idea, but more on thinking of Fulham and Bournemouth. Have they given championship clubs now the blueprint on how to stay up, or is it still really based on luck? Because like leading right into this conversation with Burnley, what happened?
Yeah, I think Bournemouth is a really good template. I talk there of teams like, if you think about, you get promoted for the Championship, can you do this and get to the next stage and then think about Europe? Bournemouth are obviously a ways off of that. I think they're 14th or 13th in the table at the moment. Bring back the question you asked a little bit earlier, would you rather be a poor Premier League side or a good Championship side? I'd rather be Bournemouth this season than I would be Leeds. And that's sacrificing a lot of wins, a lot of this, a lot of that. One of the benefits of getting into the Premier League is you can attract a really interesting manager. Maybe this is just me who would prefer this. You can attract a really interesting manager who every week is going to play these top sides, is going to play these lesser sides who are still mid-table but are well coached and have brilliant players who cost 35, 40, 45 million, and you're going to be able to pit your wits against them. And it's just going to be really fulfilling from that perspective, whilst also having your own group of players, because of being in the Premier League, who are just really, really impressive. That's what I would put as the example. Like you say there, Bournemouth, I think they're a really good example of a team that, being in that mid-table landfill, doesn't have to be the most depressing thing in the world. It can still be really fun with the right appointment as manager and the right recruitment. You can have a really good time being a fan of that team without pushing too high. Now, when you bring in the fact that if you are Leeds United and you have that fan base and you have the money off the back of that, you have an excuse that you can actually get further up and you can think, yeah, we can actually invest a little bit more in these other teams with the gate receipts and the TV that we'll get and the fan base that goes, worldwide. You can actually push a little bit further than a team like Bournemouth. And same goes for when you compare it to Fulham. But yeah, they're two examples of teams that have good managers, two examples of teams that have recruited fairly well and done a decent job of it from that perspective. You mentioned there the Burnley perspective of this and how things have turned out for them this year. The worry with them, and this is something that I think people will think about a little bit more going forward now, is when you have a team, and it's not to say that they were too good, but when you have a team that has a set way of playing and can pull it off so well in the Championship, always playing with a talent advantage, when you get to the Premier League and that's your style, you better be really good at it. Because if not, you're going to get none of the benefits and all of the weaknesses are going to show up. Like, you can get promoted and be an expansive side and do well, to borrow from my own club, it never didn't work out in the end. It kind of fell off a little bit, but Bielsa's Leeds win the Championship and then finish ninth the next season.
The best.
Yeah.
Bielsa era was the best.
Yeah, we're kind of like, I think it was a perfect marriage of COVID, keeping people indoors and watching more football, and what that team did. We're almost like the streets won't forget team of the last 5 years. Like, people really enjoyed watching us because we'd lose 6-0, we'd beat someone 4-0, we'd draw 3-3 with someone. Like, you can have that kind of experience and you can do those kind of things if you're really good at what you're doing. The problem is with Company's Burnley is that they were in a bit of a weak Championship field. They didn't really get battle tested. They didn't have a great summer in terms of recruitment. And Vincent Kompany is getting a real lesson as a manager right now, which I think he'll learn from, because I do still like him a lot. He's just getting a little bit of a lesson in terms of you need to be able to adjust a little bit here and there. Or
pragmatic. That's a big word I always use with Vincent Kompany. Like, sometimes you just have to set up a little bit differently. And you think after all these bad performances, maybe he tried to mix it up a little bit, but it feels like same or different week, same result in a way.
Yeah, you can find a happy medium with this stuff. I think when people hear the word pragmatic, they think of Sam Allardyce putting 9 men behind the ball and a big man up top and putting it into the spaces. Like, you'll be worse off for doing that no matter who you are. That's going to make you a worse football team. But like you say there with pragmatism, it's just a case of, do we want to be committing an extra midfielder into these areas, or shall we have them stay back and just improve our rest defense a little bit? Shall we keep our high line, our back line really high and press really high, or should we have a commitment whereby if the opposition make a third pass, we don't then press that third man and we bring the back line back a little bit so that they can't hit us in a kind of manufactured transition? Those kind of things, just little adjustments to your game, which can go a long way. It doesn't mean, like I say, that you're putting everyone behind the ball. You can save that for the games against, Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal. But in general games, a little bit of pragmatism in terms of adjusting your pressing and adjusting the way that what your triggers are. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's what all the best managers are able to do. It's what Iraola's been able to do. It's what Marco Silva's been able to do. And you've seen for both of those guys, it's worked out really well for them, and they've had success.
Absolutely. All right, we've gone late, so I'm gonna have a couple rapid fire questions for you. Okay. And so try to rattle them off quick.
I was going to say, I'm not good with rapid fire, but I'll try to.
Yeah, I'm asking a lot of you here. Number one, does Leeds make the playoffs, or are they going to be in the top 2? Yes or no? Or which one?
I think we'll be second.
All right, so that answers my question. They will be promoted. Awesome.
Yep.
Now, we mentioned coaches. Top 5 coaches in the Championship. Go. Not in a particular order. I won't really make you think through it, but just 5. Rattle off 5 names.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I put Kieran McKenna there. We mentioned there. We had that conversation. Really impressive.
Ipswich, right?
Yeah, Ipswich, like we say. Yeah. Enzo Maresca. He's the Leicester manager. I think even though it's his first year in the job, he's proven that he can implement a style really, really effectively. So I'd put him in there. Michael Carrick. I really like Michael Carrick. Yep. I really, really like him. I'm higher on him than most people. So I think I almost have to say him, because I think that Middlesbrough squad is a relegation level squad. And even though they're not that many points off it, they are in mid-table and they do have a game in hand as well. So I think he's done a really good job as well. I think he's done as good a job this year with them as he did last year when he took them to the playoffs. I think he's a really good manager.
Plus, they sold Chuba Akpom too, which was a big
exactly.
loss.
Well, that's
Rodgers.
That's what I mean. Exactly. I think last year they had a mid-table squad and he got them in the playoffs, and I think this year they have a relegation battle squad and he's got them into mid-table. You know what I mean? It's he's made them overperform in back-to-back seasons. So yeah, he's really impressive. I wouldn't have said Daniel Farke 2 months ago, but I will now. I think the adjustments he's made with Leeds are actually been really impressive in terms of being able to have. He's better at adjusting against a low block, and he's also better at, he's figured out his best team. It's taken a little while, but he's figured out his best team, which I think is one of the things that you could have panned on him with Norwich, that they had issues with the lineups that he came out with, trusting some of his favourites from what they'd done before and things like that. I think he's had a really good 2 month streak, and it's been reflected in the results. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there and put him in there. And for the last one, I feel like I almost have to go with another one of my guys and someone to look out for. Luke Williams just recently took over at Swansea. Results have been mixed so far, but he's won his last 2 games, I believe. They're going to ponder to the end of the season, I believe. They'll, win games, lose games, draw games. It won't be that exciting. They'll finish kind of mid-table as he's figuring out his style. The style will be exciting because his football's really good to watch. But they're one to watch for next season, I think. I think he's a really, really good up-and-coming coach. And once he gets them in for a pre-season, Swansea are a generally smart club. They'll make good signings. I think he's going to have them right in amongst the playoff push. So, yeah, Luke Williams, put me co-signed with his name.
All right, just rapid fire recap the manager and who they coach for, just so, when I clip it, we can all have everything together.
when he gets sacked in October. Luke Williams, the Swansea City manager, who they appointed him from Notts County. And people might know Notts County because they were the team that pushed Wrexham all the way to the end of the season in the 5th division last year. They 2 teams finishing both with 100 points in a league that only allows the league winner to go up automatically. So yeah, they had to battle through the playoffs. They did. Started this season well, and ultimately he's taken the Swansea job. So yeah, look out for them next season. I think he's a really good manager, and they'll have a really good team, really exciting team as well next season.
So Daniel Farke, Enzo Maresca, Michael Carrick, and then I'm forgetting the other 2 names just because I'm not that familiar. What are the other? Luke Williams.
Luke
and
Williams
then
and
the
Michael
5th one's
Carrick.
the Ipswich. What's the
Kieran
the
McKenna.
Ipswich? Kieran McKenna. Bang. All right. Now, 5 of either the most upcoming players or 5 of the best players in the championship. Maybe I would lean to the younger side here.
Yeah. I agree. Just in terms of these are the players that will be cropping up in the next 2-3 years.
That we'll probably see in the Premier Leagues. Yeah, like stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah, whether by promotion or whether it's by a transfer.
I'm putting you on the spot here, so my fault.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm more just thinking about whether I want to go with Somerville or Gray is just kind of my Leeds nomination, and obviously that it seems a little bit biased, but I think with how good we've been and how young the squad is, it's fair enough to put one in there. I'll go with Somerville, Crescencio Somerville, who has been amazing this season. He actually did have a little bit of a good patch in the Premier League last season, but he was outshone a little bit by Willie Nonso. Whereas this season it's been the opposite. Crescencio Somerville's got the team by the scruff of the neck and has pulled us through some tough situations where we've come up against those low block teams, and he's had that little bit of magic to get us out of it. So I'll put him through as my Leeds player, and obviously shout out to Archie Gray as well. He's a great talent. And
17 years old, crazy.
It's crazy. Yep. I'll go also with Jaden Philogene from Hull City,
the Puskas winner.
Well, I mean, the tough thing with that goal, I don't know if you've seen the angle from the crowd that shows how bad a deflection that was. I almost wish I could erase it, because watching that goal for the first time, I was like, oh my God, what the hell is that? It's the best goal I've ever seen. But even, that wasn't just a flash in the pan moment for him. His whole season has been incredible. Like, every time I watch Hull, he's able to carry, like, less so now because they've got a bit more talent across the board and Rossini's football's getting across better. But early in the year, he was carrying that team on his back. He's been really, really impressive. And yeah, if you get to watch Hull and, watch like Fabio Carvalho, like you say, 20 minutes in, Cavalier is a good player and you'll be enjoying him, but you'll be thinking, who's this other guy on the wing who's doing all sorts, who's squaring up his man, who's getting doubled up and being able to throw a shoulder and play a crisp 10-yard pass into the space that they're providing for him. So yeah, I'll shout him out as well. I might end up doing this. It might be quite attacking favored as well.
That's cool with me.
Yeah. I think the attackers who do well in the Championship, usually it serves them well. going forward. If you can do well in the Championship as a young playmaker, winger type, I think it projects you well to succeed in other leagues just due to the physicality. Jack Clark, I'll say.
Sunderland, right?
Sunderland. He's a young player who he went to Tottenham when he was a really young player for a move. And it's funny, it's kind of one of the things with Tottenham's recruitment that they bring in a manager, he brings in his own players, but then Daniel Levy will have his own little signing that he makes that's just kind of a little investment piece. And Jack Clark was signed as a 19-year-old winger when Jose Mourinho was there. And anyone who was looking at it could see, that guy's not really going to get a fair run in that side. He's hopefully not going to make much of an impact. And lo and behold, he didn't. So he goes back to Sunderland, goes back into the Championship, has a little bit more experience under his belt. And yeah, he's been absolutely incredible. And again, another one of them players who, if Sunderland don't keep up with him, he'll be back in the Premier League. He in my mind is just like the typical Crystal Palace type signing when they just pluck a playmaker from the Championship. Like I could see them
Adam
selling.
Wharton.
Well, yeah, exactly. Adam Wharton, Michael Elise, Eberechi Eze. Like I could see them. They sell Eze for 40 million and buy Jack Clark for 20. That kind of thing. That wheeling and dealing type stuff that they're able to do. I could definitely see that happening. I'll go a bit further back as well. I'll go with Pierre Ekwa, who plays for Sunderland, holding midfielder for them. Yeah, I think people soured on him a little bit because he's not been as good in the sort of last few months, if I'm not mistaken. And I also don't think he played that well in that massive game they had against Newcastle in the Cup. There was a lot of hype about that game, and I think a lot of people tuned into that knowing how big a derby that was and came away not overly impressed by him. But yeah, if you're able to just kind of watch your bog standard Championship game with him playing in it, he's a real tidy presence in midfield. He's like everything you could, if you reel off the list of what you want from a deep lying midfielder, of just the composure on the ball, a little bit of physicality to keep it, the speed to be able to nip in there. He's just a really good passer. He's able to understand tempo of when we need to go or when we need to settle. Every time I watch him, I'm really impressed with what he's able to do as a young midfielder. So I'll put him there as well. And this might be a little bit rogue because I don't actually think he plays that much for them. But Phillips, a young centre back who plays for Plymouth, Ashley Phillips, I think his name is. He's on loan from Spurs, I believe. He's not played that much. I think he might have 1,000 minutes in the Championship this season. But I've watched him a few times, and I don't understand why he doesn't play more. He is just an absolute like Rolls Royce type of defender, and maybe this is projected a little bit further forward with him. And obviously, it's really hard to break into those big six clubs. But I look at what Tottenham ask from their centre backs. Like they need to be good on the ball, and he needs to improve there. But really, with the way they play with the high line, like you can see why they signed. You can see why they signed Mickey van der Ven. Just straight line speed, covering space, absolutely eating the space up.
Track star.
Exactly. He could just and he's big and strong as well. It's the same with Ashley Phillips. He's been able to, and in the Championship, you'll get some really tough physical strikers. He's been able to knock some of those guys off the ball and get a foot in, and been able to keep pace with other players who are really athletic in a way that I watch those attackers play against other defenders, and they just have them for breakfast. Never mind the fact that I think this kid is still about 19, 18. Like those guys will bully way older players. And listen, the on-ball stuff, I haven't seen it as much from him being at Plymouth. From what I've seen of it, it's okay. It's nothing that blows you away. We're not talking about a Ben White type centre-back prospect. But just that physical profile. Like I'll be shocked if he doesn't peak as a decent Premier League centre-back. So yeah, I'll throw him in there as well and just give a bit of love to the defenders.
So we got Phillips, we got Ekwa, we got Jack Clark, we got Somerville, and we have, you said
Jaden Philogene.
Philogy?
Philogene. Like Billie Jean.
Philogene. Okay, there we go. But Euan, thank you so much for coming on the pod today and kind of letting the listeners know kind of what's going on in the Championship. It's great to learn about a league that just quite frankly we don't have that much access to. ESPN Plus only plays like 1 or 2 games a week, so it's really tough to keep up with it. But thank you for being our finger on the pulse, as always, it's great to have you on, and can't wait to have you on again.
Yeah, mate, really appreciate it. Like I say, if anyone's not watched much Championship so far this season, it'd be a hell of a time to start getting into it because it's going to get really exciting the next couple of months. So yeah, appreciate having me on.
With that being said, we will catch you on the flip side.